All right, welcome everyone to the Crescent Review. This is our inaugural episode, episode one. I'm your co-host Horace.
I'm your co-host Amar.
Okay, so basically the format for this podcast, this show is going to be we're just going to be reviewing the previous week's news, geopolitical events pertaining to the Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan, East Asia, all that stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. And we have a presentation to go alongside it. So, all right, so Pakistan Weekly update. Yeah, Mar, you can take over for this one.
Yeah, I mean, here's some key highlights. When it comes to politics, there's a fierce debate on creating 12 to 30 new provinces. It's been a September 1st deadline for Afghan refugees to leave voluntarily. If not, they will become like a bit of a manhunt. 12 to 38 new provinces is really interesting. It's about breaking down these huge subas or provinces like Punjab or KPK or Sindh and having much more localized governances. I mean, Horace, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it could offer interesting change to Pakistani politics. I don't know if it's really feasible though. 12 to 38 new provinces could cause. I don't know. It could be interesting. I don't know if it would fragment the nation to any degree. Um, I don't know. Do you
Yeah,
think it could alleviate like the problems the country faces? I don't know.
I think to a certain extent it could. To a certain extent, it won't. The problem is like if it expands bureaucracy. Right now, there's a lot of areas that are underserved. Right. I think case like my opinion is like in certain areas I'm for it. Like I think I can speak for Karachi. Karachi I think would benefit immensely from becoming its own province, right? Just because it's much more it needs much more centralization, right, than what we have going on right now. And we've seen that a lot of the services are neglected because they just get wired into interior cent.
Right. Yeah, I guess if each province could have their own autonomy, that could be good. But the central government still needs to hold a significant power too. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think as like a revenue generator, I think it's like a Karachi specifically as a major revenue generator should probably be around like the direct governance of Islamabad. I mean, Islamabad is its own like um city, right? And I think Karachi deserves something like that as well.
Yeah, I think all the revenue that Karachi generates that should go back to the people of Karachi because we've seen like over a trillion rupees of tax rupees goes to Pakistan's national treasury, but Karachi is arguably the worst city in Pakistan in terms of just the infrastructure damage, and it's just the floods that happen every year. So it's not a very well maintained city as opposed to like if you compare to Lahore, Islamabad, like those are significantly better overall, I'd say. So we just need better equitable distribution of the wealth and the resources and development. So yeah,
Yeah,
move on to the
100%.
economy. Yeah.
Yes, I mean government tenders 100,000 tons of sugars to curb the price surge. Inflationary pressures are there. They're definitely not as bad as the Imran Khan years. I've seen significant improvement in that, but that doesn't mean that they've gone away. And now moving on to security, there's been 143 military attacks in Balochistan, specifically, or combining KPK and Balochistan, but the vast majority of these are in Balochistan. It's up 74% since July with 194 killed. Now, the vast majority of those are militants, and not state security forces or any civilians. Yes, there has been some civilian. That's generally due to like some of those terrorist attacks. Um, but I think we're gonna break down in the next couple slides the nature of the violence and how it's different from how it was in August, because the BLA launched some pretty major operations or attempted to launch some pretty major operations. The main one was called Operation Bomb. And that led to like state level crackdowns, and we can see the nature of the tax change. And we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Operation Bomb, yeah. So, BLF and the BLA had like their uprising week. Um, and, they synchronized attacks across multiple sectors. So Mustang, Kitch, Zob. The targets were telecom towers, rail lines, FC checkpoints. FC's Frontier Corps, attempted assassinations of intelligence operatives. Those failed. They hit a couple telecom towers. They hit one major rail line, called the Jaffa Express. There was no posts that were overrun. There were several IDs and ambushes that were foiled. The state response led to over 30 to 35 militants killed, safe houses seized. Now that's really important because it exposed some really high net worth and
Yeah,
high
individuals
profile
working.
arrests.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll go into that.
So I mean, it was like their attempt to look like an army again, right? Simultaneous
Yeah.
hits on like telecom hours
So
or
this is
telecom
this is a
towers.
map of the Balochistan conflict, like the different regions within Balochistan, and then you can see the fatality range based on each district, and then the different like the different operators in those regions. So you have like the BLA, you got the TTP, the Taliban, you got Lashkari Jangvi, you got the Balochistan Republican Army, you got the Liberation United Front, the BLF, Lashkari Balochistan, the Liberation. So a lot of these are, so are all these movements like separate, or they all have the same, like in terms of the Balochistan ones, they have the same objective, right? They want like an independent Balochistan, right?
Okay, so I think to look and really understand what this map really is there's two main groups here, TDP and BLA and BRF, right? Or yeah, BLF, BLA, right? They're kind of not the same. They've split after Pakistan cracked down on leadership, so they split up and they haven't been as easy to track, and they're much more fractured. But to break this down, you have the TTP, which is basically, in essence, their belief is that Pakistan is a kafir state, which is, Pakistan is a non-Muslim state, and they want to impose Sharia law, their version of Sharia law, on the Pakistani populace, and they think the Pakistani army is a kafir army, and it's all run by Punjab. So they have a interesting hatred towards the Pakistani state and its people. And so it's more of a religious movement, right? A religious extremist movement. The BLA and the BRA, right? As you can see, their goal is the same. Their goal, interestingly enough, is to just create like a secular, independent Balochistan. They very pro-Israel, very pro-India, get like funding from India via like Dubai networks, via crypto, via like the Hawala networks, which is like informal. Um, money laundering, right? Operations. So they're different,
Yeah.
and I feel like this map is slightly misleading because they're not active in all these zones, but they have like some presence in like a decent amount of these zones, right? So BLA and BLA Baloch nationalists, you can see them on the bottom. So Panjgur, Turbat, and Awaran. Those three areas are really the main areas where you see Baloch separatism.
So this
Now,
area right here, like this area,
yeah, let me switch to that. Yeah, pretty much.
it's a puncture.
Right there. That's exactly where you see more Baloch separatism. You see the heartland in the middle is where you see a lot of Pakistani nationalism, right?
Okay.
With the exception of Dera Bukti has some Baloch nationalist elements in there. But a lot of like central Balochistan is pretty Pakistani nationalist. Um,
Yeah.
and if you go like up north to Musa Hill, that's Pakistani, very pro-Pakistan. Um, and then if you go all the way to the corner where you see Zob and Mustang,
So
those are more
here.
like TTP or TTP strongholds. Like, yeah, um they won't have like the majority support, but there's going to be a decent amount of support that they still generate. That's where actually a lot of TTP fighters were killed this past year. Early in May, there was like a drone strike that killed 75 militants, right? Just got caught trying to sneak over the border. So yeah,
And we can talk
those are
about
kind of
Gwadar. This is very important too, right? This is where the CPEC. is going on.
Yeah, so the
Uh,
CPEC corridor goes right through Guadalajara right there. And it's massive for a couple different reasons. In essence, China wants to turn into Shanghai because it has the ability to turn into Shanghai because of its deep water port berths. And that's then no, there's very, very few ports in like the world that can handle that type of port strain and container strain, and Gwadar so happens to be one of those areas, right?
yeah,
Um, and it's been hampered because of BLA and TTP involvement, right? And it's significantly slowed down investment. But yeah, that's kind of Pakistan's key to the future. Yeah.
got you, got you. All right, let's go to the next slide. Uh, oh wait, let me erase that. Yeah, you can talk. I'll erase this process.
Yeah, so moving on to like key arrests. Amir Khan Lahiri, who's an inspector and prosecutor in Quetta, right, the provincial capital of Balochistan, arrested on August 22nd for facilitating BLA operations. So one of the main ones that he facilitated was the hijacking of the Jaffa Express early in 2025. Um, Dr. Usman Ghazi. Okay, so yeah, and it kind of shows you like kind of the penetration that like these insurgencies or these separatist groups had within the state.
Yeah,
Dr. Usman Ghazi is another one. He was a lecturer. He was actually PhD BUI teams Quetta, right? Rest
yeah.
in August 11th, 2025, and he was actually a Majid like brigade facilitator. So he tried to he's helped set up safe houses, and he tried to create an Independence Day plot to yeah, well, blow up an Independence Day parade
Wait, in like in Balochistan?
in Balochistan. Yeah,
Oh, but it
he
didn't
got
get
caught.
it got caught. I'm assuming.
It got caught. The reason why I got caught was under Operation Bomb. Like there was safe houses that were seized, right? They were
Yeah.
able to seize the telephones of militants, and because they were able to seize like these militants' telephones, they were able to then put together the dots, like who are their contacts? Oh, and then it happens to be a state prosecutor. It happens to be Dr. Usman Ghazi. Actually, Dr. Usman Ghazi gave up Mir Khan Larry, and he confessed to it.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it tells you about like the penetration that this insurgency group has within regional government and security forces.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Okay,
Yeah.
so then
So
let's talk about the overall trajectory. How
yeah,
can
yeah.
this
Let me the last piece. Turbat, Panjgur, financiers, and couriers. They asked 6 to 8 individuals, including businessmen and a school teacher, were detained for moving 10 to 15 million PKR per month via Hawala networks. That amounts to about like 50K. Um, yeah. So Hawala networks is informal like money laundering. Insurgency trajectory. So they transitioned from organized raids, trying to like overrun posts, really trying to take on the army, to just setting up IEDs and mortar attacks and just switching to a much more online campaign. And that tells you a couple of things, that the insurgency is starting to get like a little bit more desperate. They feel the pressure. There's
Yeah.
now 100,000 Pakistani troops in Balochistan, including Frontier Corps, right? So that's putting some serious pressure on these guys, right? So they're gonna, instead of trying to shoot and take over posts, what they're gonna do is like plant IEDs and law branded mortars, right? I think the Pakistani military has to crack down on that. And I think the way they do that is they need to have heavily invest or invest more in drone warfare, instead of just looking at like um, investment in just jets, and not just jets. I feel like that's the wrong thing, but like airstrikes. Um,
Okay.
and why this matters, right? Like it's a credibility blow to the insurgency, right? Arresting a prosecutor and lecturer shows like penetration into state and educational systems, financial strangulations, removing Hawala networks and local funders isolates BLA from sustaining operations, operational collapse from bold like mass attacks to hit and run tactics. Insurgents are more dwindling structurally. Strategic momentum is also shifting. Army redeployment, international recognition as a terrorist organization, and tribal backlash are stacking the deck against the militants.
Okay, very good. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, some what are the solutions to defeating the insurgency?
Yeah, the main issue with the insurgency is following, right? It's that it doesn't matter how many you kill if there's just going to be more generated, right? And the key is to capture hearts and minds, right? So that means criminalizing DBLA's narrative warfare, jail time or fines for those glorifying band outfits, right? Prohibit like symbolic affiliations, um, audit the intellectual space, right? Create a national review board to audit professors, books, and university events, monitor student unions and campus clubs, especially those that are like cultural and that are controversial. Cyberfront control. That means like strike deals with Meta, Google, and X. And TikTok to remove this kind of extremist content, right? And set up AI-backed rapid response teams to mass support and deep platform separatist accounts. Track those IP chains, burner accounts, VPN clusters used by BLA. Um, and expose some of these NGOs, right? Like I think we saw like USAID was used as a tool of the American government in order to destabilize, for example, Libya, right? A lot of these NGOs went to Libya and their sole goal was radicalization and to divide and tear apart the Libyan state, and they were successful in doing that, right? So we need to create public registries of foreign-funded NGOs, mandate full financial disclosures, and non-transparent remittance flows. Audit the think tanks, YouTube channels, and researchers, right? In quotation marks, laundering militant narratives, right? Very, very common, and creates civilian firewalls, right? Launch digital media scholarships for youth in Balochistan, KPK, right? So that you can actually effectively fight back against this.
Okay, got you. Thank you. Okay, so I'll move on to here. Uh, so so recently we had the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in China, and we had world leaders. We had Vladimir Putin. We had Kim Jong Un. We had Iranian diplomats. A lot of these Asian uh, countries were at the summit, and including Pakistan. So this is actually a quote from President Xi. He said that China supports Pakistan's fight against terrorism and hopes Pakistan will take effective measures to ensure the safety of Chinese personnel, projects, and institutions of Pakistan, creating a secure environment for bilateral cooperation. Right? Because China, if they're going to invest in a country, they want to make sure that there's a flow of continuity, and that the country's stable and they're not going to be continuously bombed as they are right now. So it's a very important critical issue for China. Um, and actually at CPEC, sorry, not at CPEC, at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Pakistan signed an $8.5 billion investment deal with China, according to state media. And so this includes $7 billion in a memorandum of understanding and $1.5 billion in joint ventures covering agriculture, renewable energy, electric vehicles, health, steel, other sectors. So this is basically the next phase of CPEC as we're seeing. CPEC has been going on for what, a good 20 years now, right? But obviously we've seen a lot of setbacks because of the insurgency, and also bureaucratic hurdles. So Shahbaz Sharif, the prime minister, he's basically assuring Chinese investors that the government would enhance security for their workers, which is very important because we've seen Chinese workers being targeted and killed, which is unfortunate. So CPEC overall, basically, it's about building, improving roads and rail systems to link Western China's Xinjiang region to Pakistan's Gwadar port, as we mentioned earlier, which connects it to the Arabian Sea, which would allow them to acquire oil significantly cheaper than going through the Malacca Strait. Um, so yeah, that's Pakistan. So let's move on to Iran. So IAEA inspectors, which is the International Atomic Agency, they were allowed back after a 2 month standoff, right? And there's currently talks going on in Geneva, and there's a snapback sanctions threat because they don't want Iran to, go beyond their nuclear enrichment program, so they can go like nuclear, so they can develop, nuclear weapons. Honestly, I'm not sure why Iran is even doing this. I don't think this is a good idea because we've seen like they really can't be trusted. But we'll go into that later. Oil exports hit 1.7 million to 1.8 million barrels, highest in years. China remains the primary buyer of Iranian oil. And then also, there was an Israeli raid near Damascus that killed 6 Syrian soldiers. And they're still targeting Iranian-linked militia sites that still exist. That were basically established during the time that Assad was in power. Now he's gone. So that Syria was a crucial fighting ground for Iran. So after After Assad was taken out and Hezbollah's leadership has been crippled, Iranians' geopolitical position is not looking as good. So they kind of have to, they have to like re they have to reconsider their strategy because Israel right now is looking they have a very good position in the region. Plus they have the backing of the United States, so not really a fair fight to be honest. So this is a graph of crude oil production that Iran is doing. So that, it's been increasing overall pretty solid, staying around the 3 million zone. So this is like today's news. So Iran will accept limits on its nuclear program and restrictions to uranium enrichment if international sanctions are lifted. That's what the foreign minister said, and they're ready to forge a realistic and lasting bargain that entails ironclad oversight and curbs on enrichment in exchange for the termination of sanctions. So I'm actually quite surprised by this. I didn't think the sanctions were this crippling that they were actually going to consider restricting their nuclear program because nuclear deterrence is really important for Iran because if they give that up, then Israel can strike them anytime. So and they don't have a good air force either. So as we saw in the previous war, basically all of Western Iran's airspace was basically overrun by Israel. They really couldn't do anything, so they had to fire the missiles from like the eastern region that was hard for the Israeli jets to target. So I think Iran having nuclear weapons is very important because that's the only way for them to deter any Israeli attacks. So we'll see how that goes. Who knows? This could just be posturing from Iran, but it seems like the sanctions are hitting them pretty badly. This is a graph of their uranium stockpile. So since May 2021, they've been enriching it quite a lot. A significant quantity is 41.7 kilograms or more of uranium enriched up to 60%. So Iran has enough 60% enriched uranium as of June 13th, if enriched further, to produce at least 10 nuclear weapons. Honestly, there's a good chance Iran either has or is very, very close to having nuclear weapons because they have some of the best engineers and nuclear scientists. Even though, yeah, Israel has killed a lot of them, they have a lot more. So,
I'm curious, like if that's the case, then why haven't we seen nuclear testing from Iran?
I remember seeing some articles. There's like some massive earthquake in Iran a couple months ago, and people were speculating that could be a nuclear test. Obviously, only they don't. No one really knows. But I mean, that is a good question. If Iran does have nuclear weapons, they should just kind of just announce it to the public. Because if they do that, then that's a good posturing on their end, and America's probably going to back off, and Israel as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean that's yeah, that'd be nuclear deterrence from day one. But I mean, I guess I think maybe like having nukes would just mean automatic sanctions too. I mean, I think we saw it in Pakistan. Pakistan hid the fact that they had nukes for a while. I mean, technically, there are rumors that Pakistan had it in 1986, and then they withheld it until India did nuclear tests like in 1998, and then Pakistan responded with their own nuclear test. So it might be the case. Might also just be like some sort of other tests. Not exactly sure.
yeah, we'll see
But there
how
is
that
one thing
goes.
that's undeniable. In order for Iran to not be assaulted in the way it was during the 12-day war, I think it is imperative for them to develop nuclear weapons. Like there's no doubt in that.
Yeah, because I mean, look at North Korea. No one's touched them since they've gotten it, right? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, the thing is, Pakistan hasn't been hit by the same level of sanctions because they don't. Pakistan doesn't, serve the same threat as Iran does. Iran is like openly hostile to America and Israel. Like they literally say we want to wipe Israel off the map. So
I think
Pakistan,
Pakistan did go through sanctions. They were just cut short because of the Afghan war. I think that's huge, right?
yeah,
First in the 1980s, and then the second time in the 2000s, right? Where like America really needed Pakistan. They kind of always looked the other way. I think it also like time as well. Like they became comfortable with it. Yeah, they got sanctioned for a while, but they went away, you know?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Iran needs to really. They have to get their internal security better. They're just letting Mossad agents go around wild and just killing everybody. Okay, so you want to talk about the Afghanistan earthquake?
Again, earthquakes. It's an unfortunate situation. Uh, It was two earthquakes, both I believe, or one was 6 on the Richter scale, one was 5.5 on the Richter scale. It was like aftershock. Killed over 1,400 and injured over 3,000. I believe now the current death toll is actually over 2,000.
Wow.
About like 5,000 homes were destroyed. Pakistan in response and 105 tons of aid. That included food, tents, blankets, medicines, bubble mats. Uh,
Hmm. Oh, that's supposed to be the previous side. Yeah, these are the Israeli strikes that killed the 6 Syrian troops. We've seen a lot of increased aggression on Israel's part, not only in Syria but also Yemen, which we'll go into later. But yeah, Israel basically thinks they can do anything they want. There's no one stopping them. They don't believe in international law. So okay, going to Saudi Arabia. So obviously this is a key player in the region. So investment minister visited Beijing and to reinforce Saudi-China ties. Trade, capital markets, energy deals signed under Vision 2030 framework. China remains a top trade partner, $57 billion worth of exports in 2024, which is a lot. And then in terms of the economy, non-oil GDP is up 4.5%, which is part of the Vision 2030 diversification program that MBS is trying to do. Obviously, he knows that eventually Saudi oil is probably going to run out, so they have to diversify the economy. IMF highlights fiscal stability, $415 billion in reserves. I mean, that's a lot of money. And outlook, real GDP growth expected to rebound to 3.9% by 2026. So that's Saudi. And then security, I believe a year or two ago they had the truths with the Houthis. So they're still on diplomatic grounds. And then there's also increased coordination with the UN and the OIC on Gaza de-escalation. They've been calling, for Israel to stop their, genocide. Um, Although there's nothing really tangible that Saudi's doing. I remember seeing the other day I think the UAE sent a shipment of arms. Like they literally tracked it. It went straight to Israel, and Saudi still allows their airspace to be used by Israeli civilian airliners. So I mean, it's like they're just saying words. They're not doing anything in reality. So border security remains priority, though no major domestic incidents. So yeah, nothing too crazy on Saudi. So this is the Saudi minister and their Chinese counterparts meeting up there. Um, $50 billion worth of goods were exported to Saudi in 2024, and then but Saudi exports totaled 57 billion, over 80%, which was oil. So China and Saudi are starting to do more investment collaboration, which we'll see how that plays out, especially with America, because I don't think America likes that too much. So we can see how that goes. Okay, Turkey. So this is pretty massive. President Erdogan demands a Gaza ceasefire, and their parliament condemned Israel's campaign. Large-scale domestic protests in solidarity with Palestinians. So everyone knows Turkey's economy is not doing too good, but it's actually been cooling down for the past few years, so that's a good sign. Central bank's orthodox monetary policy stabilizes the lira, and then in terms of security, there's still some skirmishes with the PKK, which is like the Kurdish independence movement. Border security reinforced after summer drone attack on Ankara, and they're coordinating with the Iraqi Kurdish authorities to restrict PKK operations. So that's Turkey. And then last Friday, they actually announced that they were going to close their airspace to Israeli government planes and any cargo of arms for the Israeli military. And this comes on top of a ban on direct trade between Turkey and Israel in May 2024. We've completely cut off our trade with Israel. We've closed our ports to Israeli ships. We do not allow container ships carrying weapons and ammunition to Israel to enter our ports, nor do we allow their aircraft to enter our airspace. So this is a pretty big, cut off of relationships. It's like been 2 years. I don't know why they waited this long, but
I think
I
they're
guess
just very tied in economically.
yeah. But
Um,
what does Turkey gain from Israel? Like,
Billions of dollars worth of money. I think it's not just that. I think it's a couple fold, right? I think one fold is they gain uh they gain capital, they gain like, trade. But two, they're in the good grace of the United States at the end of the day. Anyone that deals with Israel or stands up to Israel will have to deal with the United States. And I think give like having the great relationship with Israel that they did for so long, um, allowed them and afforded them as like a key uh not like key pro-Israel player. Not pro-Israel is a very strong word, but key, they showed that like the Muslim world can work with the Israelis, right? And it was a key thing for the Israelis to have like such a big power be more or less sidelined now that they're more in the forefront, right? With Erdogan trying to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, or in I guess the official term is neo-Ottomanism. We've seen like a step forward, right? Which is like, okay, like decoupling from Israel slowly but surely.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so I don't think Egypt will ever sever ties. Those guys are sellouts, but we'll see. Uh, so okay, Yemen. So massive news today. Houthi drones somehow managed to penetrate Israeli air defense, and they hit the Ramon airport near Eilat, injuring civilians and briefly halting flights. Israel struck back, killing Houthi leaders in Sana'a. Actually, that was earlier. Like last week, they basically bombed the presidential palace and killed their entire cabinet, which is kind of crazy. There's still a humanitarian crisis going on there, cholera outbreak, and then we have the Israeli strike that killed the Houthi Prime Minister Ahmed al Rawahi and ministers on August 28th, and then they appointed a new guy. So Yemen's the only one really. They're holding it down for the region. They've been attacking the Red Sea shipping, which has actually hurt Israel a lot. They've lost billions of dollars in trade by through Yemen. So Yemen's doing pretty significant deal. And then obviously they're being funded by Iran, so they have the advanced missile technology to.
Question for you.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, question for you. So UN's
Okay.
detentions rose to 19 after raids in Sana'a and Hodeidah. What are they raiding UN staff, or what's the reason why? Like, what is up with the UN staff detentions? Like, if you could expand on that.
I don't know actually. I'm not. I didn't really look into that too much. But I think the Houthis they raided one of the UN staff detentions. Maybe because they perceived the UN to be in collaboration with Israel or something. I'm not too sure. I have to look into that more to be honest. Um, yeah. So this is a photo of some of the damage at the airport from the drone strike. Okay. This is our final. This is the final section. So Palestine, we got heavy bombardment on Gaza City. Over 1 million displaced. Entire neighborhoods have been destroyed, and this is like the next phase of the Israeli campaign to basically they just want all the Palestinians to get out of there, so they can build their resort city or just basically completely settle it with their own people. West Bank, Israeli raids in Nablus injured 80 plus Palestinians. Homes and shops occupied at sniper positions. Widespread protests in Ramallah, Hebron, and Nablus against the Gaza war. Settler violence continues to rise. That hasn't changed. We've seen, they estimate at least 200,000 people have died in Gaza, not the 60,000 that they claim. It's significantly more. I mean, if you just look at photos, I mean, the entire, like, all of Gaza is basically, it's just rubble. There's nothing left. So there's probably at least over 100,000 people just like, lying in the rubble. No one's being able to get them. So, I mean, it's crazy that's happening before our eyes. But, oh yeah, this is a video. This is of them, the Israeli strike hitting the high-rise building. So I mean, look at this. There's people in tents. I mean, this is what's happening. Yeah, they claimed it was used by Hamas. All right, buddy. Yeah. So I mean, this is like every single day. At least 100 people are just being killed. So I don't know what the end of sight is, but it's not looking too good. But yeah, that is pretty much the end of this week's recap. Omar, you want to say anything?
Thank you guys so much for listening, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll catch you later in the next episode. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed. Goodbye.